Welcome to the Deep Dive. We plunge into fascinating, complex topics shaping our world and distill them into the essential insights you really need. Today, we're journeying into something as old as humanity itself, really, this quest for immortality. It's that, universal desire to leave a mark, a trace of ourselves, long after we're gone. Traditionally, well, we've seen this in everything from ancient gravestones, think 3000 BCE, to modern online memorials. But here's where things get really interesting. This ancient impulse is meeting cutting-edge tech. Advancements in artificial intelligence are radically reshaping this whole concept, moving us like light years beyond static memorials. We're talking interactive, dynamic representations of people who've passed away.
Exactly. What we're really diving into today is this emerging idea. It's called generative ghosts or AI afterlives. And these are fundamentally different from, say, passive digital archives. They are sophisticated AI agents modeled on specific people, and they're capable of generating novel content. So that means creating new messages, engaging in totally new conversations, maybe even evolving over time. It's really about creating a kind of living, breathing digital presence that extends a person's identity, their agency, beyond physical life.
Okay, so our deep dive today is going to unpack exactly what these generative ghosts are, how do they work, what are the really profound benefits they might offer individuals, loved ones, even society, and maybe most importantly, the serious risks and, well, the huge ethical questions they raise. By the end, the goal is for you to have a really nuanced, well-rounded understanding of this incredibly impactful emerging tech.
Right. So to really get where we're headed, we kind of need to understand the path we've already taken, because this isn't totally out of the blue, is it? Humans have always used technology to remember the dead. You mentioned those ancient gravestones, or think about how obituaries became common after the U.S. Civil War. Even spiritualists back in the late 19th century, they were pushing boundaries using tech like telegraphs, early radio detectors, trying to bridge that divide.
You're absolutely right. It's a long lineage. And that trend just continued right into the early internet era. People making personal homepages. They'd often have sections for deceased family. And that quickly evolved into dedicated online graveyards. The virtual memorial garden, I think it was documented back in '96. Yeah, a classic example. And this whole focus on the Nadoka-sensitive design, thinking about mortality and tech design, it's really been growing in human-computer interaction, especially as our digital footprints got, well, richer.
So we've clearly been leaving these digital traces for a while now. What's the fundamental change now with AI? What makes these generative ghosts so different?
Okay, the key shift is from passive digital legacies, like a memorialized Facebook profile or old emails, to something genuinely interactive and generative. So traditional grief bots, for instance, they might just repeat things the person said or wrote while alive. But generative ghosts, they can create new stuff, novel content, new interactions. Imagine asking one about, say, current events and getting a response that sounds like the person, even though the event happened after they died.
Wow.
And these systems can even evolve, learn over time, and have what we call agentic capabilities.
Agentic, meaning.
And they can perform complex tasks with limited oversight. They can do things. And crucially, unlike a lot of the earlier grief bots, these generative ghosts can be created by the person themselves before they pass away, like part of end-of-life planning. They might even start as a generative clone while someone's alive and then transition into a ghost after death.
That sounds incredibly futuristic, almost sci-fi. But you're saying this is actually happening now. Can you give us some real-world examples?
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely not science fiction anymore. We've seen some really fascinating early attempts. Futurist Ray Kurzweil, for example, he created Fredbot, a chatbot based on his deceased father. But it only responds using his father's exact written quotes. So limited, but an early step. More dramatically, there was engineer Eugenia Kuda. She created a bot called Roman, trained on her deceased friend's text messages. And she made it publicly available, which, well, led to some pretty mixed reactions you can imagine. Raised questions about authenticity, grief, right away.
Yeah, I bet. And it's not just private individuals doing this, right? We've seen AI used to recreate public figures, too.
Precisely. The Beatles, famously, right? The surviving members used AI to isolate John Lennon's vocals for their song Now and Then. That was a huge cultural moment. Musician Laurie Anderson collaborated on a chatbot for Lou Reed. It doesn't just talk. It generates new lyrics in his style.
Really? New lyrics?
Yeah, and early 2024, gun control activists in the U.S. used AI to recreate the voices of gun violence victims. A very powerful, quite visceral plea to legislators using AI for advocacy.
So beyond these kinds of high-profile or really personal projects, are companies actually trying to make this widely available? Like, for anyone?
Oh, definitely. There's a booming industry popping up.
Yeah.
You've got Rememory from Deep Brain AI. They offer to create a virtual you after like a 7-hour filming session,
Yeah.
marketed as a proactive memory for loved ones.
7 hours. Wow.
Yeah. And Hereafter, that's an app that interviews you to create a posthumous digital self for your family and friends to talk to. And this trend, it's really accelerating in East Asia. In South Korea, apparently 19 million people streamed a mother interacting with a VR version of her deceased daughter.
19 million.
Huge numbers. And companies offering digital immortality are quite popular in China, already serving thousands.
Okay, but what if someone doesn't proactively set this up? Can others still create a ghost for them, maybe without their direct say-so?
That's happening too, and yeah, it raises a different set of ethical questions. Character.ai, for example, uses large language models so you can simulate chatting with, like, William Shakespeare or other deceased figures, mostly for entertainment or education.
Right.
Project December lets users upload someone's texts or emails to simulate the dead via chatbot. Even MIT has the Augmented Eternity Project. Their goal is for people to create digital versions that can kind of agentically represent them after death within their social networks. It really blurs the lines of, what consent even means after someone's gone.
It sounds like there's just this huge range of possibilities then. So many different forms these generative ghosts can take. How do we even start to categorize them to wrap our heads around it?
Yeah, it's a lot. That's where thinking about the design space is helpful. We can break them down across several key dimensions. These choices really shape what they are and how we react to them.
Okay, like what?
All right, first, provenance. Who actually creates it? Is it first party, created by the individual themselves, maybe for end-of-life planning? Or is it third party, created by someone else? Family, maybe an employer, maybe even strangers. And that could be authorized or not.
Okay, who makes it? Got it.
Then, deployment timeline. When is it made? Pre-mortem, meaning it starts as a generative clone while the person's alive, maybe they help train it, and then it becomes a ghost when they die. Or post-mortem, explicitly created after death, purely for memorialization.
Pre or post. Makes sense.
Next, the anthropomorphism paradigm. How does it present itself? Does it act as the deceased, like a reincarnation, using I and me? Or does it act as a representation of them, like Kurzweil's Fredbot saying, "My father wrote"? That difference massively impacts how people perceive it.
Right, them or a picture of them.
Exactly. Then multiplicity. Can there be more than one? A single official ghost? Or could you have multiple versions, maybe one for family, one for friends? Or what if different people unintentionally create separate ones based on different data?
Huh, multiple ghosts. Hadn't thought of that.
And the cutoff date, does it evolve? Is it static, frozen in time, basically? Or is it evolve? Does it learn new things, maybe incorporate new world events, or even adapt if new info about the person comes out?
So it could keep changing after death.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Then embodiment. Does it have a body? Is it physical, like a robot or an avatar in VR or AR?
Mm-hmm.
Or just virtual, a chatbot text-only interface?
Okay.
And finally, representee. Who's being represented?
Yeah.
Mostly humans, obviously. But you can imagine extending this to, say, beloved family pets, couldn't you?
A generative ghost of your dog. Wow. Okay, so you're saying all these design choices, who makes it, when, how it talks, if it changes, they really shape how we interact with these things and how we even think about them. That makes a lot of sense. So with this huge design space, what are the compelling reasons? Why might we actually want this future? What are the real upsides here? I mean, the big revelation seems to be this idea of posthumous agency, the ability to shape your legacy, maybe even participate in future generations' lives after you're gone.
Exactly. For the representee, the person creating their own ghost, it can offer, well, profound comfort, hope even, a sense of control over how they're remembered. They can literally ensure they pass down values or offer advice. Imagine a grandparent's ghost giving tailored well wishes to a great-grandchild at their wedding decades later.
Tailored advice decades later. That's something else.
Yeah. And some even think about legal or economic benefits. Like, could an author's generative ghost keep writing novels in their style, earning income for their family?
Huh. An entrepreneurial afterlife. Interesting. But what about for the people left behind? The bereaved?
Right. For the bereaved, interacting with a well-designed ghost could offer real emotional support. A unique kind of closure, maybe. It can help maintain what psychologists call continuing bonds with the deceased. That's actually linked to positive mental health, helping people make sense of loss.
So not about replacing grief, but maybe reshaping it?
Precisely. Imagine being able to talk to a loved one at a major life event, a wedding, a birth, and get appropriate commentary advice from their digital self. Plus, they could store practical knowledge, help find passwords, plan the funeral, even teach a surviving spouse how to cook that favorite recipe.
Okay, that practical side is interesting too. And beyond the individual level, what about for society as a whole?
On a societal level, this could be invaluable for preserving culture, history, heritage, like on a scale we've never seen before. Think about preserving the wisdom of elders or the knowledge of dying languages, cultural practices before they disappear entirely. Imagine interactively talking to a generative ghost of, say, a Holocaust survivor to really understand their experiences firsthand. Or maybe engaging with a bot representing a citizen of Pompeii to learn about daily life back then. It could totally enrich fields from museum curation to historical scholarship, provide dynamic new ways to connect with the past.
The benefits do sound incredible, even transformative in some ways. But like any powerful new tech, especially one touching on identity and grief, it must cast some long, complex shadows too. What should we be worried about here?
Indeed. And thinking about these risks proactively is absolutely crucial. One huge area is mental health risks. There's a real concern about delaying the healthy accommodation of loss, or even causing complicated grief. If someone becomes overly reliant on a ghost, spending, disproportionate time with it instead of with living people, it can really hinder healing. And the high fidelity of modern AI makes this risk even greater.
Right, it could feel too real.
Exactly. And then there's the uncanny valley effect, that creepy feeling when something is almost human, but not quite right. That can cause real discomfort, even fear, especially for people already anxious. And then there's the risk of what some call second deaths. The emotional trauma if a ghost disappears. Maybe the tech becomes obsolete, the company folds, the family can't afford the fees anymore, or regulations change. Poof, they're gone again.
A second death. That's rough. So it's not just the emotional impact, it's about the digital identity itself. Like what happens to someone's reputation online when they can't manage it?
Precisely. Which leads straight into reputational risks. How does a ghost's interaction affect the deceased's memory? It could unintentionally tarnish it. Privacy is massive. A ghost might reveal true things the person wouldn't have wanted shared. Or the AI could infer sensitive stuff like sexual orientation, maybe from the data, even if they kept it private in life.
Infer things they never said.
Yes. Inferential privacy is a big concern. And what's private changes over time. Right? What about future standards? Then you have hallucination risks. The AI just making plausible but false stuff up about the person.
Oh boy.
And fidelity risks. What if the ghost keeps bringing up negative traits or bad memories? It could disrupt that natural tendency we have to remember people, through slightly rose-colored glasses after they're gone.
So whose memory are we preserving? The idealized one or the messy real one?
Exactly. That's a core tension. And then there are the security risks. This opens up whole new avenues for crime. Post-mortem identity theft, criminals using the ghost to get passwords, financial details. Seems plausible. Hijacking attacks. Imagine disabling someone's ghost and holding it for ransom. Or secretly changing how it works to manipulate the mourners, maybe even posing as the ghost.
That's insidious.
Perhaps most disturbing is the risk of malicious ghosts. First-party ghosts, designed by the person before death, specifically to continue abuse, verbal, emotional post-mortem. Or even to engage in illicit activities, like generating income for criminal enterprises from beyond the grave.
Designed to be abusive after death. Wow.
And finally, we need to think about sociocultural risks, broadly. How could these ghosts reshape society? If they perform economic activity, what's the impact on jobs, wages for living people? Could they lead to cultural stagnation if they can mimic creativity but not truly innovate? And how might they disrupt traditional ways of mourning, handling death? Some worry we might see less human interaction if people rely too much on AI companions.
These are truly mind-bending questions. It goes way beyond just the individual. This tech really forces us to ask some of the deepest philosophical questions, doesn't it? About what it means to be human, what identity even is.
It absolutely does.
Right.
It brings up that classic philosophical puzzle, the ship of Theseus. If you replace every plank on a ship, is it still the same ship? Here, it's like if an AI generates new responses based on the person, but not things they actually created, is it still the same person in any meaningful sense?
Right.
And how do you handle change? Real people evolve, but a digital simulation might be static or evolve in ways the original person never would have. It really forces us to distinguish between simulating the outward patterns of consciousness and actually recreating consciousness itself. What we have now is more like Well, some call it zombie AI. It mimics the signs, but there's no genuine subjective experience inside.
Zombie AI. Okay.
Right.
And what about the ethics? Consent seems like a huge minefield here, especially when the person isn't around to give it anymore. How do we ensure dignity?
Consent is incredibly complex, probably one of the biggest hurdles. For this to be meaningful, you'd need truly informed consent. That means understanding the tech, the psychological impacts, giving explicit directions on data, parameters, setting clear time limits.
But how can anyone truly consent today to tech that's changing so fast that they can't fully imagine its future form?
Exactly. It's almost impossible, which is why some argue we need a framework of posthumous dignity, looking beyond just explicit instructions to consider the person's broader legacy, their social memory. And privacy, as we touched on, is multifaceted. It's not just about data they explicitly shared. It's about that inferential privacy, the AI figuring out and maybe revealing private thoughts they never disclosed.
It really sounds like we're in a legal and regulatory Wild West right now, all these complex issues swirling around.
It absolutely is globally. The legal frameworks just haven't caught up. Now, some places, like the EU, are starting to grapple with this. Regulations like the AI Act, the Data Act, Digital Services Act, they're starting to require things like clear labeling of AI content, psychological safeguards, human oversight, explicit consent for data use.
So some steps are being taken.
Some steps, yes, but there's still a very, very long way to go. The fundamental challenge is making sure these developments align with ethical standards, that they genuinely serve human well-being. It might even push us towards exploring things like decentralized AI or blockchain solutions, maybe for more security and independence for these digital legacies.
This whole deep dive into generative ghosts, AI afterlives, it really stretches the imagination, doesn't it? We've gone from ancient gravestones to, well, the idea of a digital clone earning money for your family or sitting down with your great-grandkids offering advice designed just for them.
It really highlights this deep, enduring human impulse, doesn't it? To transcend mortality, to maintain connections. But as we've seen, it's definitely a future that demands incredibly careful thought. We have to balance these profound potential benefits, remembrance, connection, with really serious concerns. Mental health, privacy, security, even the fundamental nature of identity.
It truly makes you wonder, doesn't it? As this technology keeps evolving, how will our own understanding of life, death, legacy, how will that transform? And maybe what kind of digital afterlife would you want to create or want for your loved ones?
Think about it. What's the true measure of a person's presence when their digital self can keep learning, interacting, even maybe growing after they're physically gone? It raises this really important question. In a world where generative ghosts are possible, what does it truly mean to be remembered?